G'day traders, welcome to a wrap up of Monday, the 30th of July. So daily chart, here we go here. So a day of a fairly tight range considering some of the days we've had lately, but thinking about this area here is we're getting above this, or what was resistance, now going to act as a little bit of support. So we're getting into this area where we haven't been for a few months, looking to find, I guess, the next sort of rally or flood of buyers to get up to the next couple of high points, and these high points are the highs for multiple years. So what's going to happen is these markets might back up a little bit and look for some sort of support. So the obvious support is to bounce off the top of this area here. It might even come back a little bit further, or of course, it can just keep on going up. But we're certainly in a buyer's territory. Just bring up the 15-minute chart. Sort of shows a little bit more of what went on today. So here's this particular Monday that we're looking at. So Friday was very much a day where we pushed up. You can see it's all very much one side, and this was the day where we really pushed through that level and confirmed the upside as they broke through those levels. We then had a very tight pre-market leading up to the start of the week, or start of Monday. You can see they've formed a little bit of a bottom here, and this is right on that sort of that support region, this line here on that daily chart. So what happens to the markets? Obviously they pushed up, went higher again, then they started coming back. So the thing about keep an eye out, and this is where 15-minute charts really come in handy, is if they start dropping down looking to get underneath this sort of region here, they're going to have a little bit of a sell, and you look for where they could possibly find the next bit of support, and that would be around about 1370 region. And so if you see them breaking this area, know that they're going to have a bit of a push down. So you don't see that sort of thing on the daily charts, so it's well worth having a medium term chart as well. And what there is I'm not showing it on this chart at the moment, but there's actually a pretty good trend line. It goes up through all the bottom of these markets here and through the bottom here. So during this day here, we actually got underneath this trend line. So that was another little bit of an inkling that the market was just trying to have a little bit of a retracement before finding some support and going higher. So at the moment, we're still sitting a bit lower. They might pop down and look for support, but it certainly wasn't going to be a case where the buyers had it all their own way. That's just setting up the day. So as far as looking at these shorter term markets, 5-minute charts first. So here's this area where we pushed higher. They went, came back and bounced off the top of this sort of sideways pre-market range, found some support, and then launched themselves again, and up they went higher, where they eventually topped out. Then as they're starting to come back here, what you got to try and weigh up is what's happening here. Are they going to find some sort of support, which is around the previous top of this push up here, and then hold that and look to go higher? Or once they start breaking down through that, then it becomes a little bit more evident that the market's looking to sell off and might be heading towards lows. Other markets also give a good indicator of what's happening there, and all the other markets are really dropping. The Nasdaq and Russell, when you look at this area here, what happened is basically this ES, even though it was still sitting up high, Nasdaq, Russell, all of them had already gone to their lows and were breaking their lows. So from that, those smaller markets really indicating that they're going to try and drag these other markets down. That's exactly what happened. This market popped up, bounced off this sort of resistance, and then pushed down lower and headed back to its lows again. From here, this is the region where it could have found some resistance again and pushed lower. This is where I talked about the bottom of that 15-minute chart. They started breaking through this region here, and they were very close. They just held it, and in the end that ended up being quite a good support and never got below that point. But if we pop up here and then start breaking down through here, look out, and you would have seen the market sell off. And if you're aware of that through these medium-term charts, it gives you a lot more idea of what to do within this region. The fact is they couldn't do it. They held, they pushed up higher, they came back up, and then through this region here, it was best to look at it through a 1-minute chart. Really stuck within a channel of about 4 to 5 points, and just couldn't get out of there. It didn't want to break down and get underneath that support region. Same time, it didn't want to head back up, I guess thinking it's a little bit overextended for the time being. So that's why now in this pre-market, as we're just going sideways, maybe it's going to look to pop down and find some sort of support before launching again. But anyway, time will tell in regards to that. So over to the 1-minute chart. Here's this real push up with some real conviction. They bounce back, so you can see this sideways range here. If the buyers are going to have a real go this morning, what they do is they should bounce somewhere off the top of that range and go higher. If they start getting back into this range, and that sort of changes the market, and they might find some sort of point to push lower from. But the fact is they never got back within that range, that's where they launch themselves again. So this sort of power fade here on the upside is certainly one that's going to work more times than not. All the momentum's on the upside. From there we popped up here. This is the region here. As we get to these highs and pulling back here, is by now this is when the Nasdaq and the Russell really made a difference, or really started to change their point of view as far as which way they wanted to head. So it's really handy to watch those other markets because it really tells a story of what's happening, and they're great to use as an indicator. And even though the ES was only just starting to pull back and you know, looking whether it wants to hold this sort of region through here, what happened is, like I said before, the ES and the Russell and the Nasdaq already sitting down their lows. So that's a major swing of events there, and looking like this market's going back to the lows, and exactly what it did. It pushed down, popped up, bounced off this, pushed down off this really good resistance level here. Through the top of this area here, the bottom of this area here, a whole heap of resistance, plus the other markets already down at their lows. High percentage area that this is going to look to go lower, and from there they came down and touched on their basically their cash market lows. From here, this is this region where it really dealt sideways. You can see there's a real couple of tick region here where it was trying to decide what it wants to do. It popped down lower here. I thought this is the area where it could possibly go, and once it starts breaking those 15-minute support lines, really get some sort of momentum on the downside. In the end, it's held, and eventually it's had a bit of a push up here. So this region here, it's not convincing on the upside, but it's certainly an area where the buyers are going to have a little bit of an impact, because what happened is they're trying to go lower, they fail to go lower, all of a sudden they break up above this sideways range. You can see these couple of candles here, some real upward momentum. So what that's a real kind of, again, changing of the tides, or the buyers really starting to take back a bit of control from the sellers. Okay, so it's a region where they could go higher. Expected to go higher again, looking like the sellers kind of done their dash, pop back down, pop back up. So again, twice these buyers have tried to go and not showing any sort of power, and looking like they really sort of lost momentum. Then when we see these red candles driving down these lows here, thought this is the region where they're going to go, look for it to pop back up and go lower again. But this particular case, it's just stayed within its range. But through this area, I'd say, who was building momentum? I'd say the sellers were, because of the fact the buyers couldn't get up higher. And we're certainly in a buyer's market, and we're seeing some vicious red candles through this region here. So be interesting to see what happens through this pre-market. I think it's going to try and have a bit of a sell-off. But that's just a general opinion. At the end of the day, we take price action and approach that, and when this cap market opens on Tuesday, we'll reassess then and decide what the market's going to do. So that's a wrap up for Monday, and I'll speak to you guys Tuesday.